Good morning, or afternoon, or evening, or whenever you guys are watching this, and welcome to a special episode of Tales from a Professional Nerd. And for those of us in the Americas, happy Thanksgiving. So I'm recording this a day early because tomorrow I've got to do all of the Thanksgiving family stuff. So, a little bit about me. So I end up having, when it comes to like late November, early December, and sometimes even into January, it ends up being a crazy, hectic, just a nutty set of holidays between New Year's Eve, which my buddy loves to throw a really cool New Year's Eve party every year. And various Christmases with various sides of the family, and Natalie's birthday, and Connor's birthday, and Thanksgiving, which, we normally end up having multiple Thanksgivings. It ends up being, excuse me, a crazy couple of weeks, or crazy couple of months. So what I decided to do today is go ahead and record a day early, and release this as a Thanksgiving thing, as a yay Thanksgiving video a day early for everybody. That way my hands will be, my schedule will be completely open tomorrow for the purposes of making a giant, now, I'm not making a giant turkey tomorrow, because tomorrow is actually just for Natalie, myself, and the kids for our actual Thanksgiving proper. And I'm actually making duck à l'orange. So she does not know this, but yeah, I've got about a 10 or 12 pound duck in the prep right now. We'll make stuffing and baked potatoes and things, and normal Thanksgiving stuff. And then later this weekend, we've got my side of the family and some of her side of the family coming over for a full Thanksgiving, combined with a birthday celebration for the boy, whose birthday is just just next week, and Natalie, who's in 2 weeks. So it's gonna be crazy. and that's the day that I'm making the Giganto turkey, which I have to later today mix up my special secret Bryan. Bryan, the Bryan of Bryan. That's weird. But I gotta mix that up and start prepping on that, so it'll be ready for the weekend. Because it's a big bird and it is rock solid currently. But either way, so let's run real fast through the week in Bryan. And then we'll get to the meat of today's topic, which kind of goes hand in hand with the whole Thanksgiving thing. So let's see. This week I have been painting like a madman. Last week we had a hobby episode to show that I was working on some Suhag, and I actually have a trio of them, one of each shade, done, to show you guys that I was diligent and I got them done. So here's one of the, I'm going to get it back a little further, you can see the fella. His angry teeth. This one's got like the little coral hammer thing that I made. And then here's a darker colored one with his tail up, and he's got like a more traditional metal capped, like a big block of wood with the metal cap that's been stamped onto it. And then the third one here, this is one of the ones that I didn't put it in his hands. He's got his two-handed, it's basically, he's got like a piece of girder that has been salted and weathered and wrapped around the end of a haft. And then because I didn't want to put it in his hands, I sculpted a little bandolier thing for him to carry it around with. So got all 13 of those guys done, and that's cool. I was very happy to get that out of the way. There's still a ton more fish people for that client left, but every step along the way, it's commission, commission, commission. And next on the block is a bunch more Thousand Suns for a long-standing, very good friend of mine, and one of my original clients when I went freelance the first time, like 10 years ago. I painted a lot of his Thousand Suns army over the course of the last decade, and very recently he gave me a big chunk to expand his army with, a bunch of new models and stuff. So I'm excited to get back into those. I think my next wave for him, what I'll be doing this upcoming, for the next couple of days, it's like 8 sorcerers, like different character sorcerers. It's gonna be crazy. It's gonna be nuts. And then let's see what else. I finished the final edits on a very cool, if I do say so myself, a very cool holiday-themed mid to higher level adventure for Dungeon in a Box guys, called the Gifts of the Winter King, which is going to be a special giveaway for anybody who subscribes from like now until, I think he said until December, like halfway through December. It's basically kind of like part of his Black Friday sale, and it's going to be awesome because not only I'm definitely going to put the link to the Dungeon in a Box stuff, because not only is it anybody who subscribes to the box from like now until then, will they get the free map and the free download for the Gifts of the Winter King, but they're going to get a free extra large skinny mini. Which the skinny minis, I don't have any here. I forgot. I should have grabbed one. They're the hard acrylic standees that are in every Dungeon in a Box, but this one is that of a fire giant king, and he stands about that tall. So if you are in on wanting to get these cool adventures and these cool maps, and definitely that cool special edition skinny mini, do it. Get it. It's going to be super fun. The adventure was a blast to put together. Similar to All Souls Night, where it was Halloween themed. Gifts of the Winter King is loosely Festivus / Christmas based. Maybe not so loosely in a few places, but it is. I cannot wait for people to get a hold of this, and I hope that they are talking about the Gifts of the Winter King for a while, because it is a ton of fun, and I think it's the kind of thing that could be inserted in just about any existing D&D game if your place has a mountain range and a winter time. Like that's about the two things you need. So please get a hold of the Dungeon in a Box guys. Even if you just do like the little 3-month trial subscription, if only to get in on that special sale and get Gifts of the Winter King, get the Fire Giant, the Fire Giant King. It's awesome. It's awesome. Let's see what else. Leading into so yeah, that's been basically my life, is prepping for Thanksgiving and doing some holiday shopping and painting and writing. It's been pretty normal in the life of Bryan. I did have a really big breakthrough / brainstorm on a role-playing game engine that was giving me some fits. I was fuddling around with dice, trying to figure out a table, basically a table mechanic for Gifts of the Winter King, trying to figure out how to make the dice do what I want it to do to give me the results that I want it to do without having 90 tables take up that much space. And it just sort of clicked and was like, oh, I could do that. And when it worked out for Gifts of the Winter King, I was like, you know what? There's nothing that says that it couldn't work out on a long-term gaming engine, that mechanic. Yeah, that brings one of my unfinished role-playing game engines on my computer that much closer to being done and waiting for an IP to pick up. Hopefully something that maybe my employers at Big Child will look into in the future. It'd be kind of cool to make you take one of their IPs and turn it into a cool role-playing game. But I digress. Let's see. What else? Let's see. I would say that, yeah, this week's been a lot of painting, a lot of commission painting. Every once in a while, I'll break up the commission painting with a model or two of myself, Bryan models. Tales from a Professional Nerd brings you models of Bryan. Silly. Why am I doing this? So I think that I do those every once in a while. I'll drop a model or two for my own games and stuff in the middle of a commission line, just because I don't want to get burnt out. I don't want to just basically push myself so hard on these same models again and again and again and again that I don't want to paint anymore. So I throw in occasionally a model for myself, maybe one or two, or here's like a little squad of 5 guys or something like that, especially if it's an easy paint job, because it allows me to kind of like take a breath, watch some TV while I'm painting, just get through it. Which brings me to something else that I did this week, and it does lead directly into the topic of today. So what I am going to do first is we're going to take a second to take a look at the Armor Class 10 t-shirt of the week. And that is the cool Wargamer I Play With Toys Competitively t-shirt. This sure jumped out with me because for the longest time, my mom and my friend's mom and my friend's dad, definitely my friend's dad, condolences, who recently passed. He would constantly say, What are you guys doing out there in the garage? Because that was our game room for a while over at his house. Are you out there? You're out there playing with your little dolls, your little toys, and we fought against it. They're not toys. They're miniatures. They're figurines. It's a game. It occurs to me now that I'm older and I've had years and years and years to not care about what other people think anymore. We were playing with toys, and we still do. I still play with toys, and I love it. I absolutely love it. This week, earlier, it may have been mid last week, but then kind of bled into this week. There is a TV show on Netflix called The Toys That Made Us, and big shout out to The Toys That Made Us, because not only is it a fantastic documentary style show put on by people that you can tell love toys and childhood and imagination as much as we do as gamers, and as for me personally, as the avatar of Peter Pan in Lafayette, Indiana. It is so refreshing to hear someone talk about collectibles, to talk about toys, to talk about when they played as a child, what that did to their imagination going forward. Toys, action figures, Transformers, G.I. Joe, Thundercats, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, they meant so much to me growing up. And I know that's a very materialistic thing to say, and it's, oh God, you had all the He-Man guys because your uncle spoiled you, and but that being said, I have memories. I've slept a lot since then. I'm 42 years old. I barely remember elementary school. Like, I remember the building. I remember getting beat by my principal for being an idiot, for throwing wet paper towels onto the ceiling. I remember instances, but overall, I remember having to write down a bad word 100 times because I dropped an F-bomb as a Transformer I was playing with when I was in like the 3rd grade. But either way, all of that stuff's kind of fuzzy. But just like that thing I just mentioned, because I remember it so clearly, because I had I can remember, I can't tell you which Transformer it is, like the name, but it was, so, Transformers. There's Soundwave, the Decepticon jukebox, or tape deck that had all the little tape robots. Well, later on, like in the next season, they came out with Blaster, which was the boombox for the Autobots, who also had a bunch of his own tapes. One of his tapes was a little brown and yellow lion. And I remember that lion is who I had drop an F-bomb while we were playing. And the teacher heard and made me write down the word, write down 100 F-bombs and then bring it home and have my mom sign it. Which I don't remember the aftermath, but it's weird that I remember that very specific. I could tell you where I was sitting in a room that I can't describe. I remember sitting next to a bike, like a book rack, like a spinning, like one of those kind of spinning book racks. I was on the other side of that playing with John Weaver, a guy I went to elementary and junior high with. I don't think he was in my high school. I think that he went to the other high school in town. But I remember playing toys with him, and I had that little lion tape deck drop an F-bomb because he was angry. The teacher heard me, and the rest was history. But it's weird that I can remember those little specific things, but I couldn't tell you what my 4th or 5th grade science project was. I can't tell you. Natalie remembers specific instances. Like I remember she'll remember getting a C- on her volcano or whatever, and I'm like, I don't even know if I did a volcano. Like that's all fuzzy. But when it comes to like toys and make-believe and the things that have now shaped my life, I remember that clear as day. Clear as crystal. And this show, the Toys That Made Us, it's really kind of my inner monologue when it comes to talking about action figures, because I listen to these stories and I listen to how they got made and who the amount of love they got put on, and the artists that some of the artists that are like, yeah, this went a different direction, I didn't make the millions of dollars, and then the ones that are like, I made a ton of money but I blew it all, and the next version was a mistake. I like listening to business decisions. It's so deep and it is so good. And if you have Netflix, I really, really, really recommend watching The Toys That Made Us. Start at season 1, episode 1, which is the Star Wars episode, the Star Wars Toys episode, and all the way through. I think they're in season 4 now, which even the toy lines that I don't really care so much about, like there's the episode on Hello Kitty. I really couldn't care going into it, but it was a really good episode, and it taught me a lot about that franchise, and a lot about the kawaii movement, if you want to call it that, or the existence of the kawaii. And it's cool. It's really, really neat. And I really think that they're awesome. I'll give them a huge shout out right now. That if you haven't watched, you need to watch. And because of being in that mindset of toys and cool, and I remember when I was a little kid and I wanted to make toys, and now I do. This is. Yeah, it's not to that scale. I'm not selling, $1 million franchise rights to cartoons, yet. But it's still, that love is there. That feeling is there. And early last week, before I actually did the hobby episode, there was a weird commercial that came through my Facebook page. And again, these are all related. Scrolling through my Facebook page, and it was weird. It looked like it almost initially, I thought it was like some kind of like funnyornot.com or like a clip to a Saturday Night Live or something like that, where it was like where they do made up toys where it's like communism, the action figure, something stupid like that. But I watched it, and it wasn't. It was legitimately an old late 80s toy commercial, but done now with new toys that you've never heard of. There was like this big frog thing that jumped backwards. These gimmicks that when I was little, that made all the difference. The reason why I was so into Cobra Khan in He-Man is because he was filled with a tablespoon of water and he shot mist. It wasn't even a squirt gun. It was like, but the fact that he did something was it for me. I was like, oh my God, he doesn't just have the arms and he doesn't just have the spring punch. He has a thing. And if you think about it, Cobra Khan actually lost his spring punch because they couldn't put the mechanism where the little water went. So he loses the spring punch to gain this little cologne mister that did 3 squirts of water before he had to refill him with a tablespoon again. Ram Man, same series, Masters of the Universe. He had no mobility. His arms did this. And his legs went up into his body, into a spring that made his other body go jump like 2.5 inches. Yeah, it would knock over like a block if you like set up a wall of blocks, or if he was just standing there and you push down on him and let go, he'd go boing. Again, really not that exciting. But when you're little and you're looking for the toys that are gonna do all the stuff that you want them to do, that was amazing. I was like, Ram Man's where it's at. I used to knock over all kinds of crap with Ram Man. Did it matter? Of course not. I'd like spring and hold him there and get it right next to the thing, like, haha, and like his enemy would go, and I would cheer. Ram Man defeats Cobra Commander. It was the silliest thing ever. But that's all that mattered. And so this commercial, again, come back to this Facebook commercial, it's got like this dude who's sweeping, stinging tail action. And basically what he's got that spring in the middle that does the punch thing, except he's got about an 8-inch long rubber tail that probably has some kind of weight or something at the end. So when you do the spring thing, his tail goes, ugh. And sure, if you put something near where the tail is, oh, he stung the guy. One of the guys has firing quills. Apparently some kind of porcupine. And he's just basically got this chunk of plastic dart, like a reverse comb that sticks into a notch on his back, and you hit a button and it goes, boom, and it shoots. Again, nothing fancy, nothing, oh man, this thing does my taxes or talks to me. They're not trying to break the mold. It's just a bunch of cool, like, late 80s style toys. But not based on anything. There's no, they're not like, here's the new wave of G.I. Joes, or here's the, Masters of the Universe Mark III, or here's this anime that you've never heard of. It's their own story, their own world, their own set of toys that they've created, these old school action figures. The company is called Panda Toy Brands. They're based out of California, and I'm giving them a huge shout out right now because it's awesome what they're doing. They're making the kinds of action figures that created an entire generation worth of imagination. You're creating, He-Man. This goes back to this whole toys that made us, is the He-Man episode revealed to me that the cartoon was only created, I was little. I watched the cartoon religiously. I always thought that the cartoon came first. I thought that the toys were like, oh my god, I get to play with the cool guys from the cartoon. The toys that made us that show shows me that a lot of these cartoons that I grew up absolutely like to this day still love, still adore, want to make games from those franchises, that they were made just to sell toys, that they had action figures sitting in a warehouse that they needed to sell. They needed a vehicle to get people to want to buy them, and so they put them on TV or they put them in comic books, and that blew my mind, A, and B, seeing this Pandemonium toy company kind of doing the same thing, except they're missing one element. They're missing the cartoon. They're missing the comic book. They're missing the stories. And I looked into it, and so I sent them an email and was like, "Listen, I love what you guys are doing. This is brilliant. I'm a gamer. I'm a game designer. I'm a writer. I'm an author. Whatever you might need, I would love to talk to you further about doing something with your IP, because these toys are fantastically styled. It isn't like, I'm looking at this and going, man, that's super advanced and like, no, this is a frog dude who jumps backwards about 6 inches, does a little backflip in the air. That's what he does. And if I was a child, who am I kidding? When I get these guys, I could set up bad guys behind him, press down on his little nose, and he goes flip, and he lands on the bad guys, and everyone wins. I'll be able to, if all goes well, my kid will be able to take these toys and do the things that I did when I was little, and have the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles from my old toy box fight against jumping back frog dude. Like, this is amazing. And I love the idea that someone put forth the effort to be like, let's make some toys, and we're going to make high quality old school toys and go from there. And if you go to their website, which I'm definitely going to put into the description of the thing, you must go to their website and take a look at stuff. They've got a line of bad guys. They got a line of good guys. They obviously have like a general idea of what the story is on the back end, because there's like data cards for each character, the genetic combination of a squirrel and a typhon, or and a python and a bat is the end guy, or whatever. And some of these toys are really, really cool looking, like just really well made. And if I were a toy collector, I would be looking at these and going, this could be the next He-Man. This could be, if something pops and they find a way to get into that larger market and get people to go, hell yeah. And how cool would it be if they managed to get a cartoon on like Cartoon Network or something along those lines, literally follow in the footsteps of the greats before them, follow in that mentality of, we run the commercials for the cartoon, or we run the commercials for the toys during the cartoon, and these kids will watch this and go, these toys are awesome, I want them. Because I don't care what you say, and I don't care what people say, screen time is bad, and iPad time is terrible for kids, and, it makes them never want to play with their toys, and, that's frankly, PG-13 aside, it's bullshit. My child is 10 going on 11. He loves his iPad. It's hard for you to get him to not look at a screen when the screen is on. But he's also the same kid that will ask me to go to his room and play for half an hour with his action figures with him, so we can have our Star Trek guys travel the cosmos and go into alternate dimensions to fight Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and who else did we fight the other day that was like, and He-Man guys. Like, these toys, which, when hopefully, if all goes well, I'll be able to get some of these, and I will, they're going to enter seamlessly into our playtime. And again, if you get the kids excited about something, whether it's on the screen or off the screen, they're gonna jump on it. And these Pandemonium guys, I think they are on the right. They're on they are in the right lane for where they need to be. I just think that, and for all I know, they've got plans within plans, and they already know what's going on. But I think that if they had something to drive it forward, to push it just a little bit forward into the public eye, into the kind of position that people want to know more about these toys and get these toys out into the stores. I think they could really do something cool here. And it's called like Alternation, I think is the name of the franchise name that they called it. But yeah, so I wrote them an email and I told them, I was like, hey, anything. If there's something I can do, here's my CV. This is all the stuff that I'm capable of. These are all the people I've worked for before. Let me know. And the offer still stands. I would love to do something with that IP, even if it's just write some short stories, write a comic book storyboard, hell, write a cartoon pilot, whatever the case may be. That I think that it could do something. It could be something. And it is that kind of toyetic mentality that brought me to today's topic. Again, comes full circle. That playing with toys and loving those action figures and those stories and the narrative behind the toys that I'm playing with, whether it's the narrative I'm creating or the narrative that I was watching every day after school on TV, is why I fell in love with Wargames. I fell in love with Wargames because it was effectively an evolution of playing with toys and the stories and being a part of and making new stories concerning these worlds and these characters. And to say that cartoons and video games and things did not help shape my brain space to make me into the creator that I am today would be a fallacy. There's no question that He-Man and Transformers and G.I. Joe and Star Wars, and to a lesser degree like Star Trek and TMNT, those guys, they all were a part of what made me want to create. The feeling that I got being imaginative and being part of their world in my brain is the feeling that I never want to let that feeling go. And so what it has done is that it's what drew me to the original games that had to do with miniatures, is the action figures on a much smaller scale, is what drew me to that. And then when I realized that some of these things aren't just games, that there's those huge stories and novels and in some cases video games and TV shows and there's just so much more to this than just rolling dice and moving minis around, that's where I fell in love. And similarly to role-playing games, the story, I love playing war games. I really do. I love winning war games when I get an opportunity to. But more than anything, I love the narrative aspect of it. It makes me crazy when I hear someone play, when I hear someone has created an army that is just an army or a force or something that's just wrinkle my nose, and that would never happen in the stories. The lore would forbid it. And yeah, I know that it's a little gatekeeper of me to be, you shouldn't do what makes you what entertains you if it goes against the canon. And that's on me. That's on my back. It's one of the big reasons why I can't stand the majority of Episode 8 in Star Wars, which kills me to say that out loud. It's the reason why when I would play certain games in certain tournaments and I would see allies that just don't make any sense fighting next to each other, and when you mention that to the player that playing it, it was, man, that's a pretty interesting alliance there, and they go, well, it's allowed. No, I don't care if it's allowed. You should have better grasp of the world that you're playing in, which again is a little elitist and a little gatekeepery of me, and I admit that. It's because I love these stories so much. When I hear someone when they just don't care, or they don't take the time to understand, it makes me crazy. It makes me cringe. It makes me just, I want to grab their head and, not really violence, but it's one of those things where that's what's super important to me, and that's what's important. That's what's been important to me about this whole process since I was like 8 years old. So it's big for me. And so, thinking about toys and action figures and the evolution of how that stuff came to be, I wanted to do today's topic, which is Thanksgiving. How did I title it? Wargamer Thanksgiving? Wargame Thanksgiving? I think that was it. Basically, I want to go through and talk about. I could go on for days about toys, so we're not going to talk about toys. We're like the actual action figures, Transformers, and things. I could spend entire week-long episodes talking about that stuff. We're not going to. We're just going to talk about the actual miniature games, or miniatures when used in games. And I'm going to try and talk about like my 8 or 10 kind of benchmarks. The ones that, whether it's ones that I play now that keep me from losing any more hair than I already have, or if it's important moments in my professional history, and that's what we're gonna do. So I grabbed a bunch of examples from some of my games. The first time I ever touched a mini was a D&D mini. My stepbrother Michael painted them as a hobby. He was really, really good at it. And when he went off to the Navy, he gave me his paintbrushes and his paints and all of his old Ralpartha minis for D&D. Some of which I really wish I still had those, because they were great. They were good. Even by today's standards, they were well painted minis. But I would love to show you guys some of the first ones that I ever did, because they are terrible. I love this idea of a pink cloak and orange armor, and, well, we can't have too much of the same color because, that would be realistic and not garishly stupid. So I painted a lot of garishly stupid models starting out, until I realized that didn't look right. And you could paint a model in basically 3 shades and keep it that way, and it would look great. So I already showed you the Suhag one from last week, but this is kind of my representation today of D&D minis, just kind of role-playing minis in general. They were big. They were a big deal. I spent a lot of time painting Ralpartha figures. I painted a lot of individual characters because, honestly, playing D&D back in the day, I didn't use a lot of we didn't use a lot of miniatures on maps. Not really, not tactically anyway. We would basically have a model for ourselves, and it would almost be like a pin that you would put in a board. Is that I'm in this room, and so you put your model in that place, whether or not you were specifically in that square or that hex or anything. Not really. It was just kind of a figurative spot, but it was a way for us to describe our character without describing our character. As if I could paint a mini as close as I could, I could be like, well, my guy looks kind of like that, And I ended up, I think there were several times that I created characters. Based off of the miniatures that were available. which is weird because now you can kind of do the opposite because the industry has changed. Moving up from there, I would say the next time that I really got into any kind of minis would be BattleTech. The old hex base, old hex base monsters. Now this is a Fafnir, I think. This is one of the newer ones. I've got a whole lance of guys painted in my Steiner colors. My I don't remember my my thing. They're called my guys. My inner sphere. So in BattleTech, there's two different kind of types of models. There's the inner sphere, which is kind of lower technology, cheaper on points, kind of the underdogs, and there are the clanners. And the clans have higher technology, way higher points. You have fewer guys, but they're just better machines. They've got better technology and stuff. My clans, I have always been a clan guy forever, and that's Clan Ghostbear. For every day there was a Ghostbear sticker on my first car, I had a patch on my my high school jacket. But then there came a time when people did not like playing against clan mechs, so I started collecting a bunch of House Steiner mechs, and now I've got, I don't know, probably 20 painted Steiner mechs that I can call on if need be, if we ever play. But BattleTech was probably the first time that I wanted to paint miniatures like they are in the books. Like they are. If it says that the Ghostbear is primarily light blue with white camo, all my Ghostbear would set up very similar to that. Or if it was this particular lance always painted the right arm completely red because that's where the hatchet men and the axe men, that was their kind of not the modifier, but the identifier. I would do that. If it said in the book that's what they did, that's what I did. It's kind of the first time that I realized that I wasn't just making models for myself, that I was taking these figures out of the lore and putting them on the table. And that was that. So BattleTech, and I haven't played BattleTech in a while. There's just too many other games that I think fill that time slot and that niche, for me anyway. But I still like it. I still think it's a great game, and I think that if you play with the right people, which this goes with anything. If you play any game with the right people, you'll have a great time. And I think that BattleTech lends itself very heavily to, because it has been around for so long. There are people that have played the same 8 mechs for 30 years. So they know those things inside and out. The rules have not changed so much from edition to edition that they can't kind of keep the same tactics and just sort of adjust a little bit, tweak it here and there. So over my course of time, I've been to a few MechWarrior tournaments, a few BattleTech tournaments before, and I was never really jazzed about it. As a system, it's very dicey. You get a couple of good die rolls, and your force falls apart. You could have you can be put into a situation that you're spending a half an hour basically just playing chase because your opponent doesn't want to fight you. So in a competitive sense, I'm not very big on BattleTech, but it's still a lot of fun, and I think it's a lot of fun to play with people that kind of have the same mindset as you, so you don't end up going against something stupid. After BattleTech, probably is when I ran into the I went to a convention up in Michigan called Three River Con, I don't think it exists anymore. It was like this tiny little convention held in a small boardroom, effectively, and it had 4 or 5 game tables going, but it had one really big game going of Warhammer 40,000. Specifically, a bunch of Space Marines shooting at a bunch of Gene Stealers and things that look like from the movie Alien. And I fell in love. I was like, what is this? And so they allowed us to step in and like take over a squad of Gene Stealers, or here's a squad of Tyranids. And immediately I was like, this is fantastic. Because what didn't hurt is the guy who I was playing with, he knew his lore. And so when I was like, all right, so who are we fighting? He's like, well, these are the Space Wolves. They're like Vikings in space, but they're Primarch. What's a Primarch? You know, he had the best sales pitches. Use the right buzzwords with the right people, and I was just like grabbing onto the next one like I was climbing a cliff. Like, oh, Primarch. Oh, Layman Russ. Oh, that's a tank. Oh, you know, like, and I was done. I was sold. And so I bought, at that convention, I bought Road Trader, the original, like the original 40K book, and a handful, I want to say like a copy of Tyranid Assault, which was a board game, but it had minis in it that I wanted to paint, and one, I think a used copy of Space Hulk, which had Gene Stealers in it. And from there, that was my obsession for ever. Has it ever stopped? Basically, I bought at one point between me and my friend Todd and Ian, we had every army represented to some degree. We could play at least a small force with every army, and that includes an army that doesn't even exist anymore today called Squats, the Space Dwarves. You know, I had 2,000 points of Space Dwarves back in the day. You know, like it was insane the amount of stuff. And we had an entire room in Ian's garage dedicated to Warhammer 40K. Shelves upon shelves of minis, game tables. We would do all night games where we would start, you know, after dinner and just play 2 or 3 40K games, and then by the time that third game was over, we would go to get breakfast at the truck stop down the way. I mean, like, it really was super important to us. It was a big deal, and still is. You know, I've since sold and repurchased and repainted and sold, and you know, I can't tell you the number of the dollar value or the number of 40K miniatures that have been in my hobby rig, that have been under my brush, whether it's for commissions or my own stuff or painting for friends. I could not tell you. I have no idea. Like, not even, I wouldn't even be able to ballpark it. And it would be shocking. But for 20 years, it has been just always something that is, it was a warm blanket I could always go back to. I haven't played in a little while recently because I'm not very happy with my current rule set in the army that I had, my army that I still have. But I'm never going to give it up. I'm never going to be done. If someone looked at me and was like, "Hey, you know, let's play some 40K for charity," I'd be down. You know, would I go to a tournament? Probably not. You know, I don't like where the game has gone in a lot of the competitive sense. But if somebody wants to play like a giant, you know, Super Apocalypse game, especially now that I got my new Serap deck that I got to put together, then yeah, maybe. But it'll never go away completely. I will always, especially unless they ever decide to get rid of my Necrons completely, I will always have my weird robot, my weird undead robots. Which brings me to, that was kind of my thing for a while. Oh, I do have one of my 40K guys here. This is my modified Deathbringer, or Knightbringer. They're basically like chunks of space gods, and the way that they were described is their bodies are made of kind of like this sort of living amorphous star metal, kind of like the T-1000. And when this came out, it was not that long after Terminator 2. That gives you an idea how old this model is. And so I went to town. This model normally has like this big scythe, like a Grim Reaper scythe, and I was like, I don't like how fiddly that scythe looks, so I ripped the scythe off and turned it into this kind of like living metal sword like his hand is kind of like melting down into the sword. And I liked the idea better of him being able to sort of just make the weapons out of his hands. And who knows? Eventually, if we get a bigger, better, badder Knightbringer, I will probably replace him. But right now, he serves his purpose when I field him, and he does some work for the Star Gods and then gets murdered because my rules are not fantastic right now. Let's see. About that same time is when I started doing a lot of painting for when I kind of at the height of the 40K stuff is when I sort of started to get into the business aspect of things. While I don't have any of these models left anymore, I've sold them all over the course of time. One of my best friends in the whole wide world got me into a game called Babylon 5 Wars from Agents of Gaming, a company who's no longer in business. And my first fleet were Vorlons, which were super powerful, broken if you talk about fighting against the younger races. I'll put up a picture of one of the Vorlons here in. You know what? I will probably put the. How about right now? That's what a Vorlon heavy cruiser looked like. And they had other ships, and the obviously the rest of the game had a bunch of stuff. But it was through Bryan getting me into just the idea of playing this game that I reached out to Agents of Gaming. We were part of some of their playtest stuff for the Ancients, for some of the League of Non-Aligned Worlds, which was like my big thing that I did. We helped playtest with some of those rules. That's what kind of got me into the idea of, regular people can do industry stuff. Well, that's cool. Fast forward like a couple of summers, and it was that time that got me involved. That mentality of, hey, playtesters and demo guys are part of the process and can get involved in that way. That's what got me in with Privateer Press in 2002. 2001, I think, is when we had the initial conversation. But it was through Privateer Press and their very, very first game, their very first miniature game, I should say, War Machine, and little fella like this. This is Reinhold. Reinhold, the expert speculator. He is the character. He is a gobber, basically a goblin in that world. That I created that character from scratch. As in, he did not exist in any form until I wrote a "Hey, give me work" trial piece. And in my initial trial piece, I actually had Reinhold die. And my wife at the time said, that's the worst part of this story. When I had her look it over and be like, hey, before I submit this, what do you think? She goes, that's the worst part of the story. He shouldn't die. He should live to fight another day. He should be plucky and lucky and, duck at the last minute when the cannonball goes sailing over his head or whatever. He should be this sort of like trickster type character. And so I changed the story so he lived. And Matt Wilson, one of the owners of Privateer Press, said that not only did I have the job, that I was going to be writing for War Machine, but as almost kind of a thank you of, hey, everyone here around the office, we all love this Reinhold guy, and we want to put him in the game. And so in the game he went, and it was getting somewhere either between my house or my ex-wife's house or in storage somewhere. I have the original actual pen and paper art from Brian Snowdy, who drew Reinhold the first time. And it kills me that I don't have that like framed on my wall, because that character really does mark my entrance into this industry. because of Reinhold, because of that story, I got the War Machine gig. The War Machine gig turned into War Machine Prime, the very first set of rules for War Machine, and the following year, that book won 3 Origins Awards. Now, I did not personally win the Origins Awards. It was part of the project. It was part of the overall thing. But I can say I was part of an Origin Award winning team. It was part of that project. And it was through that, because of that, that from there on out, anyone else I talked to about trying to work as a writer or playtester or anything of the sort, they saw that on my CV and be like, wow, War Machine has, Privateer Press has come a long way. War Machine, that's huge. And you were there at the ground level. And I was like, yeah, absolutely. I got in right after they had all of like 3 books for the role-playing game for just D&D. I was there as part of the creative team that made that first War Machine Prime book. And it's because of this little green bastard there and so Reinhold will always have a place in my heart. I don't play War Machine anymore, or Hordes. They're kind of the community got far too competitive, far too cutthroat, very toxic, to me anyway. So I don't really play those games anymore, but I will never get rid of Reinhold. I will always hope that something cool is happening to him in the stories. That I made a bunch of other characters for that world. I wrote almost all of the initial stories for the various arcs that have now become 15 years of canon. But that being said, Reinhold will always be the character that I think of when I think of what started my career. About the same time, I started sculpting. While this is not a game that I played, I did not play Kaiju Chaos. This is a painted version of my very first professionally available character. He is a werewolf named Vincent. I think parts of him are looking back now that all the various sculpts that I've sold to companies and whatnot, going back and looking at him, there are definitely parts that I would have changed. His hands are just baseball mitts. I would definitely do his hands differently. But for the most part, he's a decent sculpt, and I was really proud of him. Still am. And I think that it's selling Vincent and then a bunch of monsters to Kaiju Chaos and then to some other companies is what gave me the confidence to go, you know what? You've been around these parts of the industry long enough. You could do just about anything if you really, really wanted to. And it's one of those things that because of Vincent and his fellow, commercially available, I did a pair of Capybara for Rec Age that turned out to be fantastic. I loved them. But it was because of that I went, you know what? I can maybe quit my full-time job and just do sculpts and paints and writing and make that into my gig. And that's how Ursa's Den, my freelance business, that's how it was born. Is how I got my tax ID number, how I turned it into my life. And that's been 20 years. Almost 20 years. 20 years? Yeah, almost 20 years. But all right. Enough about the past. Let's talk about current stuff. So the games that I'm playing right now that have meant a lot to me, that I'm thankful for, Wargamer Thanksgiving. So here is a model from a game that means a lot to me. This is a Dragiri character, an immortal character called Jami from Dark Age. Dark Age, you guys have heard me talk about it before. It's a sci-fi apocalyptic game that, cool money or not, turned into HeMan, turned into Come On, rebranding, I don't know. That I was the project lead and head of for 6 years, 5 years, I think 5 years, and we made a lot of money with that game. We made a lot of progress. We made a lot. We put out tons of minis. We put out tons of cool rules. In fact, every time I open my email at least once a week, and I get somebody who's asking about, when are we going to be able to do more stuff with Dark Age? It's easily my tenure at Dark Age is the height of my professional career. It is when I seem to have been noticed the most, when I did the most public appearances, when I was seemingly when I definitely had the most influence in my chain of command. It's a really good time. It was a really good time, and I was very, very sad when HeMan halted production on it and let me go to do other things with the company. And I miss Dark Age. I recently played some charity stuff for Dark Age. There was so much more that we had for that game, so much more ready, that it really it saddens me, because there is a lot more, and the fans are still out there, and they still play, and they still love it. And I think with the right amount of decisions and investment, it could be something big. Still could, but it is what it is. Let's see, games that I looked out on the timer. We're running around that time, so I'm playing a bunch of games right now. Aside from like 40K occasionally, but like the Fallout miniatures game. Here's my superhuman behemoth modified with his gore sack. I love this game. It's really convoluted. It's got the rules are pretty. There's a steep learning curve, but it's a fun game. It's very scenario heavy. I play super mutants. Eventually, I will probably add, if they ever have enough ghouls to do a ghoul freedom fighting force, I'll probably do those. But overall, I'm happy with my super mutants. They're fun. I don't win that many games because my guys are expensive, and if I screw something up and they get murdered, I feel it. it's the, all right, well, this guy needs to kill. Oh, nope, never mind, he blew up. But I get cool models like the superhuman behemoth. This giant dude that's hitting you with a club as big as a car, or throwing rocks at you from across the field. Old school D&D style. So dig it. Let's see what else. I have got a bunch of guys and I'm very excited. We have King Shark here for the Batman miniatures game from Night Models. I love that game. I loved it. The first edition. I loved the second edition. There is a third edition that is about to come out in the next month. I'm excited about the new edition. I'm nervous because this seems to be a lot of changes involved. But I love their models. I obviously love the background, the narrative. DC Comics are my jam. So if the new version plays tight and it comes together well. It seems, listening just to the forums and Facebook groups and stuff, that Night Models is listening to the fan base about things. So hopefully we won't have any models that get canned as in they won't exist anymore. We'll have the ability to use them with new rules. I'm excited. I don't know a lot about where the game is going, but I love the old games enough, and I hell, even if the new game isn't that great, I'll still probably play it, and I definitely will still collect the models because I love them. They're so good. They're tight models. They're great looking. They take paint well, And for me personally, they are, they're all the stuff that I love. They're DC Comics. I love them. Let's see. The game that probably we've been playing the most lately, is Dust 1947, which is the alternate universe, alternate history world. I'm hoping to eventually get to start writing for them and maybe invent some stuff, design some stuff for them. But as it is, I'm happy just playing. It's a great game. It's an amazing community. The people who play it are just some of the most bang-up folk ever. And recently, I painted my first guy in my army. Dun, 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 dun. Zap, 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 zappy, zap. Which is funny because he's not actually... He's called the Winter Child. He's basically a flying radioactive superhuman that has radiation laser beams and punches through tanks, and he can punch planes. It's pretty cool. But he's a crazy amount of points, and I painted him first because I just really dig that model, even though I very rarely take him because he's a zillion points. And then let's see what else. Most recently, I have yet to play a game, but I am very excited about playing the new Star Wars Legion guys. Here's my unfinished Grievous. I haven't got him quite finished, and I'll probably maybe finish him later today. A little bit of history. When the first Star Wars Legion came out, it was just Rebels versus Empire. I told my friends, I was like, because I'm such a Star Wars junkie. I just whacked everything and the whole world went shaky. I'm a super Star Wars junkie, and I have said from Jump Street that game looks okay. The rules are a little basic for my taste for an army game, but it's Star Wars, so what's not to love? However, I didn't want to get into it, not only just for money's sake, but because how many games have I played that are Star Wars, that are Rebels versus Empire, Rebels versus Empire, Rebels versus Empire? And I was like, you know what? I don't want to get into it. And I made a blanket statement openly to several people that if they did the prequels, if they did Clone Wars, and I can run around with some Sith and battle droids galore, I'm in. And then they made the announcement that they were doing the Clone Wars Legion box. So I'm in. I promised everybody I would be, and I am. I've already painted my Count Dooku, my Darth Tyrannus. Grievous is just about done, and then we'll start getting into actually painting many robots, and we'll see who comes out in the future. I'm excited. It's for the first time in a while. I'm playing a game that I have nothing professionally to do with whatsoever, and I am excited to see what comes down the pipe for me and for my opponents. And who knows? That might turn into my kind of campaign, or not my campaign, my tournament competitive game. I don't know. We'll see. But that's what I'm going to do later today once I get all this edited and whatever. And then hopefully, maybe this weekend, I might even be able to get a game in with some of my friends and see how the game plays for me. Because although I've watched it played a few times, I have not myself rolled any dice for it. And I'm probably going to be pretty terrible for a while until I figure out what to get and how to put things together. So either way, let's go ahead and say that, from the feeling of playing with toys when I was little and getting into that narrative sense and making my own stories and growing into eventually the different games that use those rules and use use that mentality as it is to create and to expand and to imagine my own stuff using these toys and eventually miniatures and figurines. It's important to me, and is important that I hope that what I do with my life and in this industry, in my industry, that I instill even just a fraction of what I know, the magic that I feel, into the products that other people will get a chance to hopefully then have that instilled in them and turn around for them and go into them and their children and so forth and so on. You know, I know I have a legacy in my children, but I also want to touch people's lives on I want to put a spark of imagination in them, because that's something that I think that as long as we never truly stop playing, we never truly stop imagining and daydreaming about what could be or what might be, or writing our own stories based off of the seeds that other people have planted, as long as that stuff keeps going, we can't ever truly be done or complacent as a person. There's always more to imagine. There's always more to strive for. And I, through my creation in my war games, I get a taste of that. I get to be a child again. I get to play with my toys in a more sophisticated fashion, so to speak, a more evolved sense. And I really hope that you guys understand that. And I hope you go watch The Toys That Made Us, and you check out Pandemony Toys, and you buy cool Wargamer t-shirts from AC10. I hope that if you do celebrate, that you have a fantastic Thanksgiving. Whether you're thankful for war games and miniatures, or if you are thankful for a completely other aspect of the industry, either way, no matter what, I want you guys to go out there, have fun, and more than anything else, play some games. We'll see you next week.